All right. Picture this. You're standing at the edge of a river. The water is flowing gently, steadily. You can feel the peaceful rhythm, can't you? That effortless movement. Not forced, not rushed. Just flowing. Exactly as it should. This river doesn't hold on to its water. It gives, it moves, and in return, it's constantly replenished. Now, what if I told you that life works the same way? See, we live in a world that tells us to take, to hoard, to hold on. That if we want to succeed, we've got to keep everything for ourselves. But what if the key to having more wasn't about holding on? What if to truly live in abundance, we had to learn to let go? That's what we're diving into today, the power of generosity. And trust me, it's not just about being nice or giving out spare change. This goes deeper, much deeper. There's this ancient wisdom, right? It comes from a philosopher named Lao-Tzu, one of the greatest minds behind Taoism. Lao-Tzu teaches us something profound. Life isn't about forcing or struggling. It's about aligning with the flow of the universe. Just like that river. And generosity? It's not just an action, it's a mindset, a way of living that says, I believe there's enough. It's an act of trust in the abundance of life, but I get it. Most of us have been conditioned to think the opposite, right? To believe that life is a constant battle for limited resources. We've been taught to operate from a place of scarcity. This belief that if I give, I'm losing something. That if I help someone else, I'm left with less. Sound familiar? Let me tell you, that scarcity mindset, it's a prison. It chains us to fear. And that fear keeps us from experiencing the full abundance that life has to offer. Lao-Tzu challenges that. He flips the script. He tells us, the more you give, the more you receive. Now, I know that might sound cliche, like something you'd see on a motivational poster. But hear me out. This isn't just about money or things. It's about energy. It's about the flow of life. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how good it feels to give? That rush you get when you help someone out, not because you're expecting something in return, but just because you can. That feeling is a glimpse of true abundance. It's like planting seeds. You give, and over time, those seeds grow into something bigger than you ever imagined. But it doesn't happen if you hold on to those seeds, does it? You've got to let them go. You've got to trust in the process. Lao-Tzu talks about this idea of wu-wei. It means effortless action. It's the art of doing, without forcing, of giving, without expecting. Imagine living like that, in total harmony with the flow of life, where your actions naturally lead to abundance, not because you're chasing it, but because you're aligned with it. When you adopt this mindset, when you start to live generously, something incredible happens. You stop worrying about what you're losing. Instead, you start noticing all that you're gaining. Peace, joy, connection, fulfillment. You start seeing opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You start to trust that the more you give, the more life gives back to you, often in ways you never expected. And this isn't just some mystical idea. Science backs it up too. Studies have shown that people who give, who live generously, are happier, healthier, and more successful. They live longer, they feel more connected to others, and their overall well-being improves. Why? Because giving rewires your brain. It shifts you from a place of scarcity to a place of abundance. It tells your mind, I am enough. I have enough. And I'm willing to share it with the world. So, let me ask you, what kind of life do you want to live? One where you're constantly clutching, fearful that there's never enough? Or one where you're free, open, trusting that life is abundant, and that what you give out will return to you in ways you can't even imagine? I want you to think about that for a moment. Really feel it, because this shift, this move from scarcity to abundance, isn't just about philosophy. It's about transforming your entire way of being. When you embrace generosity as a mindset, you start to see the world differently. You stop focusing on what's lacking and start noticing what's possible. And trust me, that change, it opens doors you didn't even know existed. It's not easy though. I'm not going to pretend that making this shift happens overnight. It takes practice. But here's the beauty of it. You can start small, a smile, a compliment, a helping hand. Generosity doesn't have to be grand gestures. It's about the intention behind it. Every time you give, you're planting a seed. And over time, those seeds grow. They come back to you, often in ways you never expected. And that's the magic of it. That's the flow. That's living in abundance. So, as you go about your day, ask yourself, what can I give today? How can I live more generously, not out of obligation, but from a place of trust that there is enough for everyone, including me? And as you start to live this way, as you start to give more freely, I guarantee life will give back to you in ways that will leave you speechless, because that's what abundance is. It's not about having more, it's about being more. It's about stepping into the flow of life, trusting in its generosity, and watching as the universe responds in kind. That's the path Lao-Tzu invites us to walk. That's the life of true abundance. And it all starts with a single, generous act. Let's dive even deeper. You see, this shift, this move from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance, it's more than just a mental exercise. It's a transformation. It's like stepping out of a shadow into the sunlight. And once you do it, there's no going back. Because here's the thing, abundance isn't something you find. It's not out there, waiting for you to discover it like some hidden treasure. No. Abundance is something you create. It's a way of being in the world. And generosity, that's the fuel that drives it. Let me tell you a story. There was a man. Let's call him David. Now, David grew up with nothing. His family barely scraped by. Every penny was counted, every meal rationed. And this experience, it shaped him. He learned early on that if you wanted to survive, you had to hold on to what you had. You couldn't afford to give because there wasn't enough. Not for him, not for anyone. As he got older, that belief followed him. Even when David started to make money, even when he built a successful business, he still lived with that same scarcity mindset. He was always holding on, always afraid that what he had could be taken away at any moment. He was rich, but he wasn't living abundantly. One day, something changed. David met someone, an old mentor, a man who lived with an infectious joy and peace. This mentor didn't have nearly as much as David did, at least not in material terms, but what he did have was a sense of contentment, of enoughness. He lived generously, always giving his time, his energy, his attention to others. And David noticed something. This man was always surrounded by opportunities. He seemed to attract goodness, almost like life was rewarding him for his generosity. Curious, David asked the man, "How do you do it? How do you give so freely when you don't even know if you'll have enough for yourself?" The mentor smiled and said, "Because I trust in the flow of life. I give, knowing that life will always give back." David didn't understand it at first. It seemed too simple, too idealistic, but he couldn't shake the idea. So one day, David decided to try it. He started small. He gave his time, helped someone with no expectation of anything in return. Then he started to give more, to charity, to people who needed it, to his community. And slowly, something incredible began to happen. David noticed that the more he gave, the more fulfilled he felt. His relationships deepened, his business thrived in new ways. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. He had stepped into the flow of life, and for the first time, he understood what it meant to live in abundance. Now, I share this story because it's not unique. It's a story that could be yours. It's a story that could be anyone's. Because we all have that choice. The choice to live generously, to trust that what we give will return to us. It's a principle that shows up everywhere. Look at nature. The trees don't hoard their leaves. They shed them freely, knowing that in time, new growth will come. The ocean doesn't hold on to its waves. It lets them flow, trusting that the tide will always return. The same is true for us. When we cling, when we live in fear of loss, we close ourselves off to the flow of life. But when we give, when we release, something shifts. We become open. We allow life to flow through us. And in that flow, we find abundance. But let's get practical for a second, because I know what you might be thinking. It sounds nice, but how do I actually live this out? It starts with a simple question. Where can I give? Where in your life can you be more generous? Maybe it's with your time or your energy. Maybe it's offering support to someone who needs it, even if it's just a listening ear. Maybe it's sharing your knowledge, your skills, or your resources. It doesn't have to be grand. In fact, some of the most powerful acts of generosity are the smallest. A smile to a stranger, a word of encouragement to a friend, a moment of patience when someone is struggling. These little moments, they matter. They create ripples. Think of it like this. Every time you give, you're sending out energy into the world. And that energy, it comes back. It may not come back in the same form or from the same person, but it will come back. It's the law of reciprocity. The more you put out, the more you receive. Not because you're keeping score, but because that's how the universe works. Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone did something generous for you? Maybe it was something small, or maybe it was life-changing. How did it make you feel? Did it inspire you to do the same for someone else? That's the power of generosity. It's contagious. When you live with an open heart, when you give freely, you inspire others to do the same. You create a ripple effect that goes far beyond you, touching lives in ways you'll never fully see or understand. But trust me, it's happening. And here's the best part. When you start living this way, when you shift into this abundance mindset, you'll notice something amazing. You stop worrying about what you don't have. You stop feeling like there's never enough. Instead, you start to see the abundance that's already around you. You start to recognize the opportunities, the connections, the moments of joy that were there all along, just waiting for you to notice them. That's the magic of generosity. It changes you. It shifts your perspective. It opens your eyes to the richness of life, to the endless possibilities that surround you. And as you give, life gives back, over and over again. So I'll leave you with this. The next time you feel fear, the next time you catch yourself holding on too tightly, worried that there's not enough, remember that river. Remember how it flows effortlessly, giving and receiving, never worrying that it will run dry. You have that same flow within you. And when you live generously, when you give without fear, you tap into that flow. You align yourself with the natural rhythm of life. And in that rhythm, you'll find more abundance than you ever thought possible. Because abundance isn't about what you have. It's about what you give. So, what will you give today? Thank you for being here. If this resonated with you, if it made you think, or if it inspired you in any way, I invite you to subscribe to Peak Vitality. Let's continue this journey together, one act of generosity at a time.